Good morning. Today we are going to talk about making your own calcium carbonate for your garden. Now, not every garden needs calcium carbonate supplementing, but if you have a garden with particularly lower pH, so a more acidic garden, or if you have new soil that you have brought in with lots and lots of organic matter and maybe not as much in the way of minerals, calcium carbonate might be something that you would want to add to it. Best way to know is to do a soil test and find out. So a few years ago, I noticed when I was putting my eggshells in with the worms that after the worms digested everything else, the eggshells would still be whole. And so I realized that this really wasn't a great way of getting the calcium into my garden. And I did a little looking around and found that, it was true. Eggshells, as they aren't breaking down for quite a while. So I thought, maybe there's a way for me to get this in faster, get this into the soil faster. So I went to our thrift store close by and picked up a used coffee grinder and started grinding up the eggshells with that. So eggshells are basically 100% calcium carbonate. And so this becomes a very valuable resource if you can get it into a more usable form. Plants use calcium carbonate to build their cell walls, and that's kind of like the bones of the plant. So without calcium, I say calcium carbonate, plants use calcium to build their cell walls. And so without calcium, they can't do it. And you end up with problems like blossom end rot on your tomatoes, things like that. So it's an important mineral. And if you don't have enough of it, then you need to add more. So I wanted to get this into the soil as quickly as possible. And so I bought this grinder and started grinding up my eggshells that way. At this point, I realized that this wasn't really enough horsepower. And so I needed to step up my game. And so I continued to save the eggshells and over time built up quite a collection and recently went to town on those and created about 4 of these worth of this powder, which I'll be putting on my gardens as necessary in the next couple of years. I also use it when I'm making my seed starter mix, which you can find out about in my last video. In any case, the way I do this is, and it's important, you don't just take your eggshells and grind them because they're not sterile. And so depending on how you're going to use them, if you've got egg left over in them, or even if you don't, there still can be bacteria and things that you might be introducing to your garden that you might not want to introduce. So what you need to do is you need to bake them. And you can bake them for 20 to 30 minutes. I usually do 30 minutes at 250 degrees. And this will, not only does this sterilize them, but it also gives you a little bit of a head start breaking them down. They seem to be more fragile after they've gone through this cycle in the oven. And so when I put them into what I'm now using, which is a spare blender jar, they're easier to blend up. So you put them in like 2 to 3 cups at a time. At least this is what I do. Once I've kind of crushed them down with my hands, I will put them into the blender jar, 2 to 3 cups at a time. And I've got a pretty heavy duty Blendtec blender, so I don't know how this would work on another kind of blender, but it works really well with this blender that I've got. And I just blend it for a total of about 30 seconds, but every 5 to 10 seconds, I will take the blender off, give it a good shake, put it back on. Now, this is a dusty process, so what you want to do is you want to plug up, if you can, the holes that are sort of the air release holes in the top of the blender. Usually there's a little plastic or glass stopper, and that will have some holes. I will put a piece of plastic under that and plug that up. I also wear a dust mask, just for comfort's sake, because there's an awful lot of dust thrown up by this. I don't know if calcium carbonate is a problem if you inhale it once in a while. I don't think so, but it certainly is annoying. So I put on a dust mask, and it's possible I do this outside, but I wasn't able to do that this time, so I had a bit of cleaning up to do afterwards with the dust kind of everywhere. No matter how much precaution you take, you're going to get dust all over the place. And so after 30 seconds, you've got a very fine powder. And this, if you put that in your worm bin or your compost, and the little creatures are moving around and eating what's in the dirt, they will be able to actually, at the size of the particles, probably be able to process this through, mix it in with the new soil, and kind of spread it around for you. So that's why I grind it up, because the shells themselves, they will last for a long time in shell form. They won't actually turn into anything that can be absorbed or used by any of the creatures or plants or anything in the soil. So that's about the story. So I made a ton of this at this point, and I am looking forward to spreading that on some of the soil that is a little bit lower pH, is a little more acidic, because I will want to bring up some of the pH of that soil to the, a more mid-range pH that's more conducive to happy plants of different sorts. And that's more for the vegetables. The trees, the fruit trees and perennials, very happy with slightly acidic soil. So anyway, that's the story on DIY calcium carbonate. Now, some people will say you can take this as a nutritional supplement yourself. I don't mess with that. My feeling is that there may still be something on the shells. We don't clean the eggshells very well when we put them back into the carton to store. So there could be all kinds of stuff on that. That's why I sterilize it. But do I really want to be taking the chance? No, and I don't really need to take a calcium supplement, honestly. So you could experiment with cleaning your shells really thoroughly, with sterilizing them really thoroughly, and then putting them through this same process. It's certainly something that might work, but I don't want to recommend that. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this has been helpful to you. I hope if you do need calcium carbonate supplement for your soil, you'll be able to use this process to create something for yourself, and use this perhaps instead of lime, which a lot of people use as a supplement in their soil. You might get, the lime might be in somewhat smaller particles, and it depends on how much you blend this the eggshells up, how small your particles will be. But you might find that your lime is finer than this. That might move into the soil faster, but this is playing the long game. It's a heck of a lot better than eggshells, and you've already got it. It's a resource you have at home. You can collect, and instead of throwing it into the compost in a way that's not going to break down, give it a little boost and get it into smaller form and see how that does for your garden. All right. Thank you so much for joining me. Please drop me a thumbs up down below, and really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel. You can also find me on Instagram at Food Forest Garden Club, and you can find me on the web at foodforestgardenclub.org. All right. Thank you so much. Have a great day.